Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to take a look at an example of some polling which some think means Sunak might have a game plan with the net zero U-turn after all. There is no sound strategy here for Sunak, as I shall attempt to explain. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, an example of a poll which might make you think that perhaps this idea of Sunak's isn't as mad as I've been making out. I mean, strategically, obviously, the ideas are still mad from the point of view of, humanity surviving into the next century. The first is from YouGov, and it shows that 50% of the general population support the ban on new petrol and diesel cars being delayed until 2035. As always with these polls, it'd be quite interesting to know if they understand what that delay actually means. But anyway, importantly, 70% of 2019 Conservative voters feel the same way. And you go, well, this is a majority of Tory voters, a large majority of that. So it makes sense for Sunak then? No. Think about the different types of Conservative voters. Some of them are fixed Conservative voters, in the same way I'm a fixed Labour voter. You know, they will consistently vote to support a Conservative government come what may. The only time they will ever vote for someone else is if it's tactically in a constituency where their candidate has no chance, but they can help the Conservatives somehow. This is the majority of their voters. The absolute majority. The Conservatives are not going to halve their number of voters in the next election compared to 2019. To go from having a large majority themselves to having actually hardly any seats doesn't require that many voters proportionally to switch their vote. You know, so the majority of their voters will always vote Conservative. Doesn't matter how badly they're screwing the country. Doesn't matter how obvious it is that they are screwing the country. These people will vote Conservative. But then there are a minority of their voters who are more malleable. They make decisions on an election-by-election basis. In 2019, they voted Conservative. But in the next election, they might stay at home if they don't like any of the options, or they might vote for someone else. Their vote is not fixed. Now, if we look on this poll at the 20% of people opposed to delaying the ban, ask yourself, are they more likely to be the committed Conservative voter or the swing voter? I would suggest they're more likely to be the swing voter. If so, then this move is pleasing mostly those who were going to vote Conservative anyway, and pissing off those who are making up their minds. Now, there are other polls as well. There's polls on, say, boilers, heat pumps, for example. The Conservatives are trying to push the idea that, oh, it's an extra expense. Net zero, yes, absolutely net zero, but we can't be inflicting extra costs on ordinary people. But this is also a choice of the government. They can throw private companies hundreds of millions in state subsidies, so they can do the same for net zero as well. Also, one of their U-turns on making landlords insulate their properties, they've said, no, they don't have to do that anymore. That is literally adding to the cost for ordinary people. Because by not getting landlords to insulate, it means that heating costs are higher for the tenants, who are the ordinary people, not the landlord. You know, the climate change denier shills constantly say, oh, net zero is making people colder and poorer. But the reverse is actually true. Our energy bills doubled because of fossil fuels, not low carbon energy. And this effective block on insulating homes is also making people colder and poorer, quite literally. But just because the claims against net zero are lies doesn't mean they won't be believed. But when you look at related polls, you just get the impression it's the ones, there's always a healthy minority opposed to scaling back net zero policies which can be seen to have a cost for ordinary people. And you would think, even though they're in a minority, they are surely that swing voter target category. Now, I can't prove this because I don't get to commission polling which would drill down to that level of detail. Political parties do. It's worth their while doing it. And of course, they certainly should. So how can I be certain, or at least confident, should we say? Can never be certain. But how can I be confident that Sunak hasn't commissioned more detailed polling, built up an accurate picture of his target voters, and tailored these U-turns for strategic advantage? Well, there are three main reasons, with a couple of circumstantial ones on top. So first, the three main ones. First one, Labour were not on the back foot with this announcement. Now, when we talk about the Tories' target voters, let me be clear about what I mean. I mean voters who live in marginal constituencies where the Conservatives have a chance of winning, and those who might vote for the Conservatives, but only under certain circumstances. So they won't slavishly vote for the Conservatives, right? Now, as Labour are in direct competition with the Conservatives in most of the key battlegrounds, that means that a large chunk of the Tories' target voter will be the same as Labour's target voter. You know, when people complain, oh, Labour and the Tories are sounding the same, what you mean is you're just reading the mainstream media. Because what you're doing is you're getting that mainstream media message, which is intended to be heard by those common target voters. So if the message sounds similar, it's because, well, they're trying to appeal to the same people. What do you want? That Labour did not panic. You know, they panicked after Uxbridge, when they lost Uxbridge like by a few hundred. Oh, mass panic. Labour didn't miss a beat last week. That strongly suggests to me that they are confident that Sunak's got this one wrong. And being fair, because you think to yourself, okay, if I was to guess at which of the two parties is paying the most careful attention to polling, because you might say, well, maybe Labour's not paying careful attention to polling. Right. Of the two parties, which one is most likely to be paying careful attention to the polling of their target voter? I'm going to say it's probably the one that's 20 points ahead in the polls, right? Second reason, it took the Cabinet by surprise. The Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, was confirming the government's commitment to the ban on diesel and petrol cars for 2030, for example, just days before. It was reported that he was completely blindsided by the decision to U-turn. He's since denied that. So, oh no, I knew all along. So basically he's claiming he lied in public, right? But the evidence is clear enough. You know, there's lots of reports about cabinet ministers going, oh, hang on, we didn't know this was going to happen. Also, Sunak organised an emergency cabinet meeting on Wednesday ahead of the speech when the information got leaked out, but after the decision had been made. All of this suggests that rather than basing the decision on polling evidence, for which there would have been multiple cabinet discussions, this was the result of something else. I'll get onto what it might be in a bit. And the third main reason is that if Sunak were in the habit of paying careful attention to polling analysis, I would have expected a bit more of an effective campaign from him. That Labour have had such an easy time painting Sunak as out of touch is not just because of his wealth. It's because Sunak never manages to make statements which resonate with ordinary voters. He is ridiculed almost every time he opens his mouth. Even the privileged and privately educated Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson were able to sound like they might have understood ordinary lives. It was a con, but it was a con that worked because they paid attention. They adopted their patter. Sunak doesn't. So the idea that this net zero reversal is the result of careful analysis of polling data, after almost a year of getting everything else so badly wrong, would seem very far-fetched to me. But I did say there are a few circumstantial factors as well. Well, if I say that Sunak has not made this move for sensible strategic reasons, well, then there must be another reason, mustn't there? Now, I'm not suggesting he just gets up of a morning and spins the wheel of policies and announces whatever it stops on. As with everything else Sunak does, there is always a circumstantial benefit to his household's finances. BP, for example, agreed a huge, and I mean a huge deal with Infosys, which is the company which Sunak's father-in-law owns and in which his wife has a substantial stake. They announced that deal just days after Sunak granted loads of new North Sea oil and gas licenses, or was it a few days before? Around about the same time. Sunak's tilt towards policies which certain oil giants might approve of may be explained by personal financial gain. Like I say, it's circumstantial. It's not proof that Sunak is as bent as a £2 note for personal gain. But it would explain why he is pursuing policies which don't seem to be in the strategic interests of his party. Then, an interesting little point made on Twitter. The Tories have been adopting a number of policy positions which have been playing into the Lib Dems' hands. Yes, the Tories have to mostly counter Labour, although that's not going well for them either. But the election is not going to be binary. If the Tories move away from the views of moderate Conservatives, the Lib Dems could actually sweep up more blue wall seats than is currently being priced in. And although that wouldn't affect the size of Labour's majority, it does make it harder for the Conservatives to rebuild after the election. And according to Sam Friedman, who comments on things like this astutely quite a lot, It seems that Isaac Levidow, who's the Tory strategist, right, he's got form for this. He persuaded his then client in Australia quite recently to pursue anti-environmental policies, and then they got smashed in the most recent election in the sort of areas, amongst the sort of voters that the Lib Dems will be targeting. There's no way a Conservative leader wanting to win the election would have jumped into this massive policy change so quickly. And as I say, we know it was quick because reports abound that the cabinet were wrong-footed by this sudden U-turn. They were not expecting it. Sunak should have been saying to Levidow, so you want me to do what you told Morrison to do last year then? In the election he got smashed in. I mean, you'd certainly want to give it some real thought at least, wouldn't you? Certainly get your cabinet involved in discussions before jumping in head first. Unless, of course, these policies have less to do with sound election strategy and more to do with pleasing the oil companies and with a side bonus of getting the Tory client media on side ahead of a potential autumn of party infighting. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.